You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY and Political Voices Network. Outside the Box is brought to you by Roush Plumbing and Remodeling, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. Came into work in my Captain America shirt today, and it feels like it's going to be one of those kind of days. I see someone already calling me Captain Cominos on the YouTube chat. If I hadn't already started calling Landon Moore Captain Crispy, I would welcome that. But the TikTok chat says he has a crispy voice, and so that obviously has become his nickname now. And I'm not going to steal it from him. He's off today. I don't know what he's off doing. Well, how's everybody doing? I think it's going to be one of those kind of shows today. I've been hitting a breaking point here. I'll be real with you. This show, the last couple of days, has been very difficult for me to do. I've felt like I have had to kind of walk a line here, and I think we're hitting a point now where that line can't necessarily be towed anymore. There has to be an adult in the room who is willing to talk about this in the ways that it needs to be talked about. I'm going to be real with you. I saw the Comey news yesterday, and I sat there and I was like, I'm not even going to bother with this because I know nothing's going to come of it. I know it's going to end up falling apart. There's no case to be made. For those of you that haven't seen the posts I threw up on socials yet, and it seems as though they're gaining traction much quicker than my normal posts, so something tells me I'm going to have a lot of fodder for tomorrow's show as I read through these comments, as some ignorant people have already taken to the post to just make fools of themselves. I labeled that post saying, "Tell me your president's failing without telling me your president is failing." The reason why we're watching this Comey thing happen is because Donald Trump's agenda is collapsing around him, and only the biggest of cultists are still in the position where they are willing to pretend that he is actually doing anything worth talking about, anything worth celebrating, anything that would dictate that J.D. Vance would be the obvious follow-up to what this administration is. Anybody living outside of the MAGA bubble knows that what this president has been doing has been objective horse crap. Nothing to actually brag about, nothing to campaign on, nothing to bring home. So what do? They play victim and they scapegoat. They do their own version of the Trump trials. And for those of you that didn't know me during the Biden administration, I refused to use my airwaves to talk about the prosecution against Donald Trump for 4 years. Not because I didn't think he was guilty, but because I knew that the Democratic Party was trying to ignore a very bad economy, an economy just stricken with corporate greed that was not accessible for most people. But the Democrats didn't have the guts to take on their donors, to take on the major corporations. So they decided to talk about January 6th and all the court cases against Donald Trump for 4 years. And there were MAGA people that would listen to this show and be like, that's why this show is good, because you stay on the economic factors. And what's funny is, before I got pissed off about all of this, I have a show planned for you today about gas prices and why they're shooting up. A stash of lithium discovered in Appalachia that will cover the next 38 years worth of the supply that is necessary, that is completely reshaping foreign policy. 2 new plans, including one here in Wisconsin that's addressing the cost of single homes. Farming bankruptcies shooting through the roof even further than they were during the Biden administration. Manufacturing jobs disappearing from Wisconsin. And something referred to as the AI layoff trap. That was going to be the basis of this show today, because I want to return to what this program used to be, a conversation about real issues and real rhetoric surrounding the economy and the things that I believe are holding us back as a society, whether it be here in the Fox Valley, in the state of Wisconsin, or across this entire country. But the rhetoric is getting so dumb. The James Comey thing. He is being prosecuted right now for an Instagram post that he made over a half a year ago that said 8647. Now, for the millionth time, I am not breaking any news to you haven't heard before, although I will maintain I believe I was one of the first people in media to be saying this. As a bartender of a year and a half, I know that 86 means get rid of. Hey, 86 the tomatoes. This guy doesn't like tomatoes. And then you move on. I understand what is being said by that, and there is no threat. Moreover, if we are actually to believe that there is a threat, why wasn't something done in the 6 months lead up? No new evidence was brought to the forefront. There was no change in the discourse surrounding what was said. This is a distraction because your boy Uncle Donnie is mentioned 38,000 times in the Epstein files, and he started a pointless war in Iran that he is objectively losing and making all of our lives more expensive every single day. But let's say you're one of the MAGAs, and MAGA, you're going to need to brace for impact for the next hour because I've had enough of you and your little snowflake mentality over the course of the last 72 hours, so I'm about to undress it for the next hour. If you actually believe that James Comey is making a threat against Donald Trump and should be prosecuted and should be in jail right now as a result of what he posted on social media, great. Allow me to introduce you to Jack Posobiec. He's a right-wing talk show host that has over 3 million followers on Twitter. Back in January of 22, he sent the post out that is still available for you to see, and I included it in my video on Facebook. The post simply said 8646. For those of you not in the know, January 29, 2022 is still within the statute of limitations. So if James Comey is being arrested for a threat against the president, waka waka MAGA, time to put Jack Posobiec right in a cell next to him. Otherwise, shut the hell up about it. We have been dealing here in Wisconsin with a conversation about rhetoric. The left and all of their obviously wild rhetoric. And I have been tiptoeing around this story. So let me just get my belief about it right now, because I've kind of had enough of this conversation. So I'm putting it to bed, and then I don't want to hear any more about it on Outside the Box. The owner of the Minocqua Brewing Company, Kirk Bangstad, put out a very questionable Facebook post after the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. His brewery has a running bit where the day the president passes, everybody who buys beer from him on that day will get that beer for free. It's generated national publicity, and of course, it's brought everybody's eyes onto what he's doing right there. Now, I'm going to be real with you. I collaborate with him from time to time on the Minocqua Brewing Times. I've talked about the articles that I've written on that program before, and I occasionally will host a podcast there as well. And allow me to say right now, it pissed me off that he made that post, because to me, what it's doing is caricaturizing those of us on the actual left. As I say, I'm the real left, and that's why so many of you like this show. I do not get bogged down in liberal attitudes or conservative attitudes. I talk about why the economy and the duopoly are failing us, and I provide the statistics and lived life experience in order to back those claims up. When he made that post, he created a straw man for the entire Republican right to go, but, look how mean the left is. We never say anything like that. And they all got their marching orders and have been whining and moaning for the last 72 hours straight. And I have hit a breaking point with this James Comey story. Because if the FBI is going to crack down on 8647, then it's going to crack down on 8646. And if you disagree, shut up, you snowflake. You are a partisan hack. That is the reality that we are dealing with today. So allow me to show you the right-wing brigade just here in Wisconsin and all their big-brained, we need to find a way to tone down the rhetoric, specifically from the left, because us innocent righties, well, boy, howdy, we haven't done or said anything wrong.
They understand political debate It's pretty sharp elbows sometimes, but what he said was completely over the top. And we need to hear from leading Democrats in Wisconsin. Do you support those comments or not?
I think every elected Democrat who is associated with that individual previously, in particular those people that have utilized his campaign donations, that have benefited from his super PAC funding, need to step up and call that out for what it is. Unacceptable, inappropriate, disgusting.
That's the rhetoric that we're getting when you have politicians in Washington demonizing President Trump. And I've never seen such out-of-line rhetoric towards a president.
That was Representatives Glenn Grothman and Brian Stile and Tom Tiffany, current frontrunner on the Republican ticket for governor of Wisconsin, just flabbergasted at the rhetoric coming from the left and all the radicals that they represent, and just trying to figure out Donald Trump just loves America. Donald Trump just loves what America, and he's trying to make us safe. Why are the liberals and the left so mean? I sure hope the big bad outside the box man doesn't have 100 consecutive seconds of Donald Trump threatening violence on the left. That sure would make us look stupid right now.
President Donald Trump took to Truth Social, branding Arizona Senator Mark Kelly and 5 other congressional Democrats as traitors who deserve the death penalty.
Over the weekend, Trump effectively said that Milley should be executed for treason.
The president reacting to Mueller's death on Truth Social, saying, "I'm glad he's dead."
Knock the crap out of him, would you? I will pay for the legal fees.
If I say don't hurt him, then the press says, well, Trump isn't as tough as he used to be.
President Trump is responding to Rob Reiner's death, posting on Truth Social. Reiner's death was due to, quote, the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome.
The former president posted this photo of himself getting ready to swing a baseball bat next to a photo of Bragg. Today, Bragg's office received a package containing white powder and a threatening note.
I love the old days. You know what they used to do to guys like that? They'd be carried out on a stretcher, folks. Like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
President Trump tweeting, when the looting starts, the shooting starts.
Try not to hurt him. If you do, I'll defend you in court.
We had some people, some rough guys like we have right in here, and they started punching back. It was a beautiful thing. I would have been boom, boom, boom. I'll beat that.
He's threatening riots if he gets charged with a misdemeanor.
She says, you know, the quote, potential death and destruction in such a false charge could be catastrophic for our country.
I don't know if I'll do the fighting myself or if other people will. Like when you guys put somebody in the car and you're protecting their head, I said, you can take the hand away, okay?
Well, boy, howdy, where did all the rhetoric come from that sounds that way? I'm so mad I can't even think of words. Representative Tiffany, help me out.
Do you support those comments or not?
Exactly. Brian Stile, why don't you describe exactly what you think about what Donald Trump had to say right there?
Unacceptable, inappropriate, disgusting.
I couldn't agree more, Brian. Thank you so much for not being a partisan hack on the matter. The phone lines are blowing up, and I got plenty more to say. Let's see what we got here. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I'm curious about every time you say on the left, what do you mean by on the left?
I need you to further. I mean, like people on the Republican Party will conflate a Kamala Harris liberal with a Bernie Sanders style progressive. I am much more in the vein of tax the rich. I am much more in the vein of universal health care. Liberals are much more in the vein of, can't we find a way to continue letting corporations continue fleecing us? So when I say on the left, I mean the actual left, the people that have ideas to address working class inequality.
You mean on the left side or something, or is there a right side, or?
Are you new to America? Have you ever experienced politics before? There's the American right, which is conservatives, and then there's the American. What?
Nobody's ever explained to me what on the left means. So I'm not new to America, so I'm just curious.
I am so confused right now. Conservatives are the right. They've referred to themselves that way forever. Liberals are the center. The left is the left.
I never knew. Nobody ever told me.
Yeah, well, welcome to America. Be careful. ICE is out there and they're deporting
Thanks a
people.
lot. Yeah, I spent 6 years in the Marine Corps for you to say that. I did not know. Nobody ever told me.
Well, that sure is a shock to me. Thank you for wasting a minute and a half of my airtime. So anyway, this is what's happening in reality. This is the way that people want to talk about this. This is embarrassing. This is embarrassing that they want to act like it is only coming from one side, that James Comey is somehow uniquely a threat to what Donald Trump is, but people posting the exact same thing about Joe Biden goes to the wayside. This will not be the way that the discourse is going to happen on this show for the next 2.5 years. Wake up and experience the reality of what we are facing. Phil says, Ben, your show has been amazing lately. Yeah, no, I'm going to be honest. I really wanted to call off today, but I also am addicted to doing the show because I am so frustrated with what the system is becoming here today. As much as I believe the Biden administration failed us, as much as I could not stand what the Biden administration was, at least occasionally we would accidentally stumble into something good happening. There would be an effort to get rid of overdraft fees. There would be a click to cancel rule. Lena Khan would actually break up mergers instead of facilitating mergers at the fastest rate that we have seen. This MAGA movement is an embarrassment, and they have to rely on this stuff. They have to rally the deepest of deep red MAGAs together around the violent rhetoric of the left and all of these other fake issues, prosecuting Donald Trump's enemies, because they sure as hell aren't going to be talking to you about the cost of gasoline. They sure as hell aren't going to be talking to you about the cost of homes. It looks to me like they do not have a leg to stand on, and so they are just riding this up the flagpole and pretending like it matters. I have had enough of this double standard. I, as an actual leftist, sorry to confuse you, previous caller, as an actual leftist, had to hear about snowflakes and cancel culture and soft people and all of these different insults levied against people that were like, hey, maybe we should stop using the N-word, only to see MAGA turn around and be the biggest group of babies that I have ever had the luxury of dealing with professionally. You guys need to grow up, A, or B, I do not want to hear a peep going forward when the Democratic Party inevitably mops the floor with your trash policies, because you're not going to have a very fun November, even if Donald Trump sends the masked virgin Gestapo to scare people away from voting. Cynthia says Donald Trump said I could shoot somebody and wouldn't lose any voters. The rhetoric never ends. The rhetoric never ends. I got one texter. Thank you for the comic relief. Says, well, at least Lindsey Graham explained yesterday the ballroom is now about security of all presidents moving forward, not just Trump. Honest to God, man. Honest to God. You know what's funny is that these guys, and like obviously the violence is a no-go. You'll never hear me endorse what took place on Saturday. It's disgusting. Use your ideas and beat it. It's not hard to beat MAGA. You just have to actually have an economic policy that speaks truth to power. You'll mop the floor with liberals and conservatives. It's not particularly difficult. But if they expect us to pretend like we've all been losing sleep since Saturday about how safe the people in our government are, while we have to deal with school shootings and church shootings and grocery store shootings and movie theater shootings and parade shootings and fill in the blank shootings, and they had their first experience living life like an American every single day, I think they have a misconception of how we actually feel right now. Ben says, who cares about corrupt James Comey or Kash Patel? They are the same, just against the others. Exactly. It's an inflection of what was taking place during the Biden years. This is the Trump trials. This is a thing. James Comey's not going to jail. Spoiler warning, James Comey's not going to jail. Jack Posobiec is not going to jail. This is something that the entire media is going to be consumed with for the next month or two, not talking about the failing prices. A regular guest on Jonathan Krause's show from Gas Buddy here, and I'm trying to find the name here so that I don't misattribute it here, but he's a regular guest. He talks about tag prices. Patrick DeHaan with Gas Buddy has been projecting for the last 3 days that we were going to see gas prices shoot through the roof. That's what the conversation should be about. But Donald Trump can't win that. And to be perfectly frank, he's talking about making sure that the blockade of the strait is only going to go longer. Have fun running in November, Republicans. It's going to be an uphill battle. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Hey, Ben, Cynthia in Florida. The thing with Comey is ridiculous, but I got to tell you, I still have a soft spot for him. I don't like what he was doing regarding that Russia hoax crap. But I remember when they were expanding FISA, NSA surveillance on us, he raced to John Ashcroft's bedside when Gonzalez was trying to go there to get him to sign off on our erosion of our rights. While the man was in bed with pancreatic problems. But James Comey got there in time and saved John Ashcroft from being pressured into doing this. I hope they would have done a movie about it.
No, I dig it. And like nobody's, I mean, you know better than most, Cynthia, black and white in the world of politics or governance or whatever the situation may be is dang near impossible to find. And Lord knows, wired the way you're wired and wired the way that I'm wired, the left and progressives have been aware that the FBI is corrupt far longer than any other side of the political aisle. So it's not like
we haven't.
Go ahead.
And we haven't talked about the Southern Poverty Law Center nonsense. People don't read.
Yeah.
They actually paid informants to, infiltrate these groups, to take these groups down, unlike the FBI, who paid the guy who built the bomb that hit the WTC the first time. His name is Ahmad Salem. Look him up. Or Whitey Bulger. Paid him for 15 years to let him murder people.
Right. No, exactly. You know what's funny, Cynthia? I actually did talk about that on Thursday or Friday, and I said I had not read everything. I said I need to get my facts straight before I come to a conclusion. But you know what I used as a jumping off point? I said, well, Elon Musk seems very in favor of this, and I typically just position myself to the polar opposite of whatever he's doing, and I'm normally born out to be right. And sure enough, it happened again.
They make it easy.
Yeah, right.
Thanks,
but
brother.
yeah, thanks a lot, Cynthia. It's just such an embarrassment to see the way that people are acting. And like, I acknowledge a lot of it isn't real. A lot of it isn't actually real people. It's bots. It's NPCs. It's shills. It's people that are either paid to pretend they can't see the hypocrisy, or they're not even real people, and they are there to push people like me to the brink where I where I just can't stand it and have one of these kind of shows. But the last 72 hours have been an absolute embarrassment. Brian Keller, a senior VP of Asperius Health, just got laid off because he wore a shirt that said FDT. Not the actual words, just the letters FDT. Apparently, Let's Go Brandon is a hilarious joke that is shared amongst everybody, but FDT is a fireable offense. Don't get me wrong, you're not going to see me crying any crocodile tears for anybody in the healthcare industry, but let's stop pretending like this is only coming from one side of the aisle, because it so very clearly is a ubiquitous problem, and I am done pretending and watching MAGA try and run around pretending to be the victim in this scenario when their hands are in the exact same pool that everybody else's is. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Morning, Ben. It's Dave from Appleton.
What's up, man?
As Americans, why do we have to? This is a naughty word, but I'm going to say it anyway. Our politics are like incestuous. We need to embrace more like a worldview of the Norwegians, the Swedes, the European Union, all of the democracies of the world. that are doing health care and social services and employment rules, and we need to embrace ideas from outside of America as far as governing. In fact,
1,000%.
why do we have the G7 and the UN? Well, the UN needs to be revamped. We don't have Russia and China and the U.S. being veto everything. We need a world court.
Well, you know what's crazy, Dave, is like, and today's show is a microcosm of that. I plan a social media post every morning for 7 a.m. My intention today, I came across a chart that shows you between 1945 and 2018, cost per capita versus expected life expectancy, rather. And every industrialized country is clustered in the same spots that's doing universal health care. And then there's America, far off to the right and much lower, because it's infinitely more expensive and we significantly have a worse life expectancy than everybody else. And my intention was to make that my post, and I was going to play dumb and pretend that I didn't understand what the difference between us and everybody else was, and we'd all have a good laugh. And then this first segment was going to be about these healthcare issues. But then, of course, this crap's happening with James Comey that I couldn't possibly care less about. But the hypocrisy, the nature in which they are playing victim while obviously trying to mess and break systems at the same time, grew to be too much. And I was like, nope, healthcare videos getting pushed at least a day, because I am absolutely going scorched earth on these people today. And I started filming myself, and I showed the 8647 tweet, and then I showed the 8646 tweet, and put the ball in MAGA's court from there. So we lose out on what you're talking about, the intellectual conversation, and we end up diving down into the muck because these people will not shut the hell up or stop playing victim every time they get the opportunity to do so. When Joe Biden was in office, black pilots were the biggest threat to them. And now that they control all the levers, they are still trying to find a way to play victim, despite the fact that nothing good is coming from this presidency. And we're all supposed to pretend like the most corrupt president on the face of the planet is somehow doing something to benefit us or improve our lives in any kind of way. I appreciate the call, Dave. You got me going again here. But so I'm not living in this world. I'm not living in this world. The people that are talking violently need to stop. That is not the way that I believe we should be engaging in discourse in America in 2026. We are being pitted against one another while we are getting robbed blind by a handful of billionaires and major corporations that love the fact that this is what everybody's fighting about right now. And yes, there are absolutely jags that are pouring fuel on this fire, making life difficult for the people that actually take this seriously, that don't do this not only as a living, but actually trying to push forward positive policy that has been shown to work, as Dave highlights, in most other industrialized nations. The top 1%, the top 0.1% is thrilled that I am livid and letting MAGA know they're a bunch of snowflakes right now because they can't handle anybody talking about their dad president. But it's a two-way street. I have been shrugging off Donald Trump referring to me as vermin for a dozen years, referring to me as the enemy within for a dozen years. And I'm supposed to pretend now, because people are finally giving it back to him, that the discourse has gone off the rails and the left has so much pent-up anger and animosity. Waka waka, MAGA. It ain't happening on this show. We're going to go to break and keep it going. I see I have texts and plenty of comments to dive into here. I'll see how many of those I can parse through. We'll be back. Outside the Box, WHBY. I'm being told I have to continue the show. Brian says, oh, first of all, shout out to Michelle, who just says, right on. Thank you for calling out the hypocrisy. Paul says, good morning. I think people need to realize that Trump is going to continue to do what he wants because he knows that he has to do is pardon all guilty parties at the end. Maybe presidential pardons need to be adjusted. I mean, yeah, that's an inevitable outcome here, and I'm sure some people might get a little creative about how to nab people on the state level. But like, here's the thing, and I said as much, by the way, in the speech that's available on my YouTube page. If you guys haven't watched it, I was speaking to the 7th Congressional Democrats. I think the Democrats are going to intend on running on impeaching Donald Trump or arresting all of the people that are in ICE. And as someone that thinks that those masked jags should be thrown in jail, I do not care about repercussions. Retribution and repercussions is a Trump thing. I could not possibly care less. If Donald Trump never sees the inside of a jail cell, but people aren't afraid of going broke because they took an ambulance ride, I will continue voting for whatever party gets that across the finish line. I do not care if Donald Trump enriches himself to the tune of $4 billion, but also makes housing more affordable. It's the fact that he is so flagrantly engaging in corruption, only making life more expensive, undoing the efforts surrounding inflation and bringing the cost of living down, and then still engaging in corruption. And yet Hunter Biden was a story for 4 years. And it seems like every single day he's doing something new. At least Joe Biden inherited a pandemic. He inherited, although I will say, I do believe without a ton of evidence that American interests absolutely pushed Ukraine into this war with Russia, but it wasn't a direct American war. It was a proxy war. He inherited these moments, and MAGA had no time for any kind of increase in costs and absolutely ignored that corporate greed was fleecing us. Even under the Donald Trump administration right now, we did this segment a week and a half ago, the largest oil and gas companies nationwide are making an extra $30 million an hour in profit on top of the increased gas prices. So what are we talking about here? It's the lack of consistency that's absolutely breaking me, because if anybody listened to my show after Kamala Harris blew the election in November, I was the silver lining guy. I said, this is great, because the people who interacted with this show highlighted that what was happening under Democratic rule was not acceptable, that economy was not good. And I said, what's going to be awesome is if Donald Trump fails, I have built up enough clout with people that they will talk about this economy the same way they talked about that economy, and we will finally shake free of the chains of the two-party system. And instead, 83% of MAGA voters just turned around and started pretending like everything got better. All of a sudden, they are nervous about the nukes, when we know damn well if Kamala Harris started this bombing campaign, they would not be talking about the importance of making sure they don't get a nuke. And we all know I'm right. That's what's breaking me here, is the flagrant hypocrisy, and then saying, if you tell us we're dumb for acting this way, we will get you fired and say that you're the one that's doing the name calling. Ernie's asking me what I think about the King's visit. I mean, I can't stand royalty, Ernie. I'll be real with you. I think it's kind of ridiculous that liberals, and specifically leftists, no offense to the guy that was on the phone earlier, I'll draw you a picture later. It drives me nuts that there's still an idea, like, you understand the whole concept of monarchy is that you're born with special royal blood. Like, just based on the family that you were born to, you are somehow innately better or more entitled to stuff just because of the family you're born in. Realistically, it's the exact antithesis of what America is. Don't get me wrong, billionaires inherit billionaire wealth. That's the way this has worked for entirety, but at least it's not labeled the same way, right? The idea that we still even pretend that there's any credit behind what a king or queen or any kind of monarchy are, to me, feels outdated. It doesn't feel like the appropriate way that we should be talking about this stuff. And if Republicans want to own it, I'd at least say that's a little more on brand. But to the liberals and the leftists out there that are pretending like, oh, did you see what Meghan Merkel was wearing at the thing? No, I didn't, because I don't care. I don't care about what it is. So that's where I'm at with that. One says, Ben, regarding the guy not knowing left from right, he took a teaching moment and turned it into a chance to mock someone. I mean, you don't go into a Calc 3 class and ask someone what a derivative is. Like, there comes a time when it's just like you bit off more than you can chew. It's like my brother will like interrupt a conversation about Israel, Palestine, and I'll stop real quick and I'll turn around and I say, tell me who the prime minister of Israel is. He goes, I have no idea. Don't chime in then. Like, this isn't the time to just throw off the entire conversation, because if you've gotten that far in your life without knowing that the left and right describe political parties, I'm going to be honest, it doesn't sound like a genuine caller to me. So I guess the DOJ will be wasting taxpayer money coming after me on my protest signs, 8647 on them, D and Portage. Does it say it on there? Oh, yeah, it does. Be careful, D, because apparently we pick and choose when 86 does or doesn't count, you know? KG said, I honestly don't think we can fix our system unless we address this unlevel precedent of corruption. It's societal poison. It kills trust. I mean, yes and no. I like the best thing I can say is I believe every president ever has been corrupt. It's never been so flagrant. It's never been so obvious. As he famously said, he could shoot someone on Fifth Ave and not worry about losing votes. So I don't think he's particularly worried about flagrantly receiving donations and then doing stuff against the will and benefit of the American working class. I don't think that's a thing that he's worried about losing votes for. All I'm saying is, if there is somebody engaging in mild corruption, but accidentally making life better for all of us, no one will care about the corruption. As I said, if a progressive got into office, enacted Medicare for all, built a bunch of affordable housing, and then also enriched themselves through some kind of crypto scheme, wouldn't have cared at all about the crypto scheme. FDR was one of the wealthiest people in America when he was in office, absolutely saving us from trickle-down economics the first time around. The idea that you can't be wealthy or have to be a saint when you're in office, I think, is not an accurate assessment. But you just have to actually come through occasionally. And when Democrats come through, engage in corruption and do milquetoast solutions, and conservatives come through, engage in wanton corruption and make literally nothing better, it's hard for me to say, and that's why you got to vote for the Democrat that like barely made things better, because like, you know, Madison had a rainbow flag or something. I don't know. I really am struggling to keep track of the plot anymore. But it's just, it's such an infuriating time. And I was talking with the chat during the commercial break, and I said, people are like, man, you really don't have anything to talk about these days. I'll be real with you guys. This show was more fun when it was boring. When like politics were boring. I mean, we could actually get into pharmaceutical benefits managers and healthcare plans and affordable housing processes, minerals discovered in Appalachia, and all these other factors. But instead, I have to talk about one man baby who gets offended anytime someone makes a joke about his orange skin and tiny hands. Like, there comes a time he's trying to cancel Jimmy Kimmel again. Shut up, man. Shut up. Or if you're in favor of this, do not talk to me ever again about cancel culture or censorship or whatever it is that is on your mind. Because I'm here to tell you right now, ain't nobody on this side of the microphone going to be taking you seriously. Now, I'm going to squeeze one more quick break in. We'll have a short segment on the other side of that. We'll put a bow on this conversation. I welcome any calls or texts, 920-281-1150, and we'll put the kibosh on this, and then we'll get into more traditional outside-the-box style programming on the other side of the break. We'll be back. It's Outside the Box. Ben Cominos, WHBY. So to newer people, I am normally pleasant all the time. I typically have one of these kind of shows um once every like 6 to 9 months when something just so off the wall happens that like it's Kafkaesque is the only way that you can describe it. Like it just feels like you're living in a world separate of the reality that so many people are living in, and it's just like I will not allow this snowflake nature, should I say one way snowflake nature, um to be allowed to persist, especially in my line of work. um I know what I'm looking at. I know what we are dealing with here. And again, in this hour, I have defended a healthcare employee and a member of the FBI, two groups of people that I do not particularly have high opinions of. Um, when you really break down who I am as a person and the type of content that I do. But right is right and wrong is wrong. And the fact is, the cost of living is going through the roof, and we will be addressing that more in the 10 o'clock hour from a number of different perspectives. The jobs are going away, whether they be blue collar, white collar, or anywhere in between. Um, the jobs are going away. And it's not all Trump's fault, and we're going to talk about that. But the fact is, it's being laid at the feet of Governor Evers, and it's not his fault either. We'll talk about how that works. Gas prices are shooting through the roof everywhere in the Midwest. You'll be happy to know, and we'll talk about the numbers specifically on the other side of the news, that Wisconsin is actually doing the best in terms of Midwest states and the expected price increases that we're anticipating here. And if you haven't hit the road yet, I already had coworkers of mine stop by and let me know that they have seen these prices go up and they didn't even know that this is what I was going to talk about today. And I said, actually, those numbers tend to match up with what this person's predictions were. And of course, a conversation about mining that I had to put off from yesterday. In Appalachia, we have found a massive lithium deposit, which is going to absolutely reshape the attitudes that we have towards foreign policy, at least on the high end. I think most of us didn't even realize that mineral access was shaping our foreign policy, but now it's going to be a question of environmental protections versus the economic output from finding those minerals. We're going to break all of this down over the course of the next hour in a much more understated tone than what the first hour was. If you missed the first hour, consider downloading the WHBY app or check me out on YouTube, Facebook, or TikTok. The show's available at any time on YouTube and Facebook. And of course, you can catch me live on TikTok as well. Just search at Ben Cominos and it'll pop up. And I have all my shows up there and ready and available. We'll be back on the other side of the news. Hello, we're back. Welcome to Yelling at a Cloud Radio. I'm Ben Cominos. This is Outside the Box. We're on WHBY and Political Voices Network. Outside the Box is brought to you by Roush Plumbing and Remodeling, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. If you're just joining us, as DSL asked, did Haley come in and calm me down? I sound more settled. No. What's funny is I kind of have, unfortunately for the YouTube chat, I can text back and forth with them, but they can't hear me. But the TikTok live chat, they can kind of hear all the words that I'm saying. And I kind of had a therapy session there with them. It's just more so a frustration, a sadness with just the roundabout nature that we're on. Like, it's just been really highlighted to me over the course of the last 72 hours. I'm just sick and tired of this double standard that we live in, where jokes about the LGBTQ community and the rate at which they take their lives, that just needs to be accepted, and understand that some people have dark humor. But then you make a dark joke about religion or the Orange Dad president or ICE or whatever it is, and all of a sudden it's reprehensible, and I can't believe that person would be employed by be employed by someone that would say or act that way. And it's pushing me to the brink a little bit here. And so I had a therapy session with everybody in the TikTok chats, and so now we're back. We're going to jump into some more traditional outside the box style programming here compared to what was. But I promise you, if the crybabies come out in full force again, and by the way, I did make the offer to Glenn Grothman specifically, and I'm going to be reaching out to Tom Tiffany and Brian Style as well. If you weren't listening in the 9 o'clock hour, the three of them all have different audio bites that are currently playing on Wisconsin Radio Network right now, where they are pretending that all of this crazy rhetoric is coming from one side of the aisle, to which I proceeded to play 100 consecutive seconds of Donald Trump threatening violence against the left and liberals and people like me. And of course, I'm just, oh, well, that's just Trump being Trump. You got to get used to that kind of rhetoric. And then somebody making the same comment back to him is all of a sudden completely, I can't believe someone would be comfortable talking that way about somebody. And I'm just not going to pretend that there's some kind of credibility to that statement. I'm just not going to. So with that in mind, though, we are going to switch gears, because if you guys keep me talking about this, I will double down. So I'd prefer not to do that. I do want to get into this gas buddy thing, because Patrick DeHaan had been posting on Twitter over the course of the last 36 hours. And I had intended to talk about it, but again, the news in our area over the course of the last 72 hours has been a bit distracting. And so this show has kind of like tenuously held on to a rundown. Like, I'll hold it up to the camera here. This is what I have written down as a rundown. You can see in big letters at the top, it simply just says MAGA Snowflakes in big bold letters. And that's all the notes I had. And that's what carried me for the first hour. But then the rest of this, plus all of the notes that I have in front of me here, are all what was actually planned for the show before I got put into this kind of mindset that I was in right now. So now we're going to pivot into what he made, because for all I knew, when I was reading these, I was going to say, and people, I've already emailed out the 100-second montage of Donald Trump. People are asking, excuse me, if I can make it shareable. I will. Yes, I will. I will get it on the WHBY website. I'll do that later today, but not right now. But we'll get it up. It'll be available by, we'll say at the latest, 2 p.m. Go to the Outside the Box page on WHBY.com. I'll type up an article. I'll make it like you'll know that it's the article, and then I'll just include the audio in the article, and you guys can feel free to run around with that and share that wherever you see fit. But yeah, thank you for asking there. But let's get into this here. So he had been making predictions, and I was going to present it that way when I first came across this story. I was going to say, hey, somebody that works at Gas Buddy, and for the record, even Jonathan heard that I was going to do this as a segment, and he said to me, hey, here's a website where you can actually get Patrick DeHaan on. So I might actually even reach out later on this afternoon. But like, I don't know how much more he can add to what I'm about to say, but I'm at least going to talk to him and see if there isn't a way for, if he'd be interested in coming in and talking a little more in depth about all of this. He went on the record. He says, great Lakes states, Minnesota, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, Ohio could see could see a double spike week as continued refinery challenges in the region has caused a large surge in wholesale gas prices, which are now 40 cents per gallon above their early April level. He went on to say, getting chills thinking about this, but rarely, if ever, do I see wholesale gasoline prices doing what they've done for the Great Lakes states in the last week. Minnesota, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, retailers for the second day are getting absolutely obliterated. Expect a jump soon, likely in about 12 hours. That post went up 10 hours ago. Retailers are underwater. Look for in Michigan 449 to 469 per gallon. Indiana 429 to 459 per gallon. Illinois 469 to 499 per gallon. Ohio 439 to 459 per gallon. And of course, what we care about most here, Wisconsin, 419 to 439 a gallon. Maybe not today. This was 23 hours ago because prices cycled yesterday, but within the next 48 hours, a person came into the Woodward Ranch here about 10 minutes before I was going to go on the air. And he said, so I just drove by a certain major chain in the Wisconsin area and it was telling me 419 per gallon. He goes, I wish someone would have told me that when I saw 389 earlier in the day. And I was like, oh, I wish you would have told me because I've actually been sitting on this story for the last 36 hours and getting ready to bring it to people's attention. Now, thankfully, we are the lowest rated number on that list, 419 to 439 per gallon. But the fact is, there are announcements, and this is outside of the situation surrounding the Strait of Hormuz. And I think it is important to highlight because much like the oil and gas prices were not Joe Biden's fault under the COVID era part and the war in Ukraine era part, technically, I did blame Joe Biden from a corporate greed standpoint and not having the spine to stand up to the major oil and gas companies that were obviously gouging us, much like the Trump administration does not have the spine to engage the oil and gas companies from that perspective. But this is not Donald Trump's fault. This is happening outside of the purview of the Strait of Hormuz. Where it becomes an issue is when you have a bit of a foreign policy moron making prices higher through his own decisions, and then something like this happens, well, then it starts to absolutely get exacerbated. It starts to only combine. And as Donald Trump stated yesterday, that they are only intending to intensify the blockade at the Strait of Hormuz, which, as if you haven't been listening along since the beginning of this conflict, it's a globally priced commodity. So us blockading other nations from getting it, it doesn't make sense. It shouldn't work this way. And it's probably an important reason why a certain political party should not be limiting our access to renewable energy. And we should, in fact, be trying to find ways to bolster it. But as a globally priced commodity, the fact that we are blockading other nations from getting access to it is going to drive the price up even further from there. As I made the comment before, as one person on the TikTok chat is theorizing that it could be stock manipulation, absolutely possible. One listener in Los Angeles saying they're at $6, which I've seen that as well. I think I saw 619 in DC. But as I mentioned in the first hour, I would not want to run on this. And I already see the Wisconsin GOP trying to say that energy prices are high because of the Green New scam and Tony Evers. And I'm here to tell you right now, you're not going to have a leg to stand on, at least not on Outside the Box. I'm sure you'll be able to take it to Right-Wing Hack Central, which is 1,500 out of 1,600 talk radio stations. But on this show, we are unfortunately beholden to reality. And the reality is the foreign policy decisions by the Trump administration already brought the price up. Oil and gas companies are then using that as a guise to increase their prices even further than they have to, raking in $30 million an hour in extra profits relative to what was happening before the war in Iran started. And now we're going to have the minor blips and radars like this directly impacting the Midwest as a result of our refinery issues. This is what a bad president does, ladies and gentlemen. This is what bad leadership does, and this is how we end up in this moment. Justin says, riding home from up north on a new used motorcycle and averaging 67 miles per hour, even if I get rained on. No, or miles per gallon, rather, even if I get rained on. I feel you. I absolutely feel you. I drove out to Wausau for that speech I did on Saturday, available on the Ben Comino's YouTube page. And, I filled up beforehand, and thankfully I drive a Honda Civic. I used to have a CRZ, and man, do I miss that little Prius-looking car. But even the Civic gets pretty decent miles per gallon. But I was up over $40 for a full tank, which we're back now into the post-COVID era again. Only we didn't need a pandemic to get us there this time. Oh, man, that CRZ got such good. I was getting like 460 miles per tank. I told the guy when I went to buy a car, I said, I was 30 when I bought it, and I said, I want a car that's cheap, gets good miles per gallon, and lets people know I'm not interested in starting a family. He gives me this 2-door CRZ, and I would just whip it. I was just whipping it around downtown Pittsburgh. And like people be like, Ben, you're not going to be able to fit in that parallel parking spot. I'm like, watch me. And I would pull in. I wouldn't even back into it. I would pull into it front ways and get in there because that's how maneuverable this car is. And then to make extra money, because full-time jobs don't pay enough in America, I started becoming a DoorDash and a Uber and Lyft driver. And you can't have a 2-door car and drive for the rideshare apps that carry people. So I had to sell it, unfortunately, and I got a stupid Civic. And it's fine. It's fine. It's definitely not the same. Andrew in Oshkosh just took a picture, 429 unleaded, 420 88 or 426 premium, or premium's 549 down at Quick Trip. Yeah, that sounds about right. Larry said he's going to be driving to Wisconsin next month, and he's hauling 7,000 pounds worth of stuff when he does it. It's getting ugly out there, and what's I think important to emphasize is this emergency is man-made, and there's a chance there might be a post about this on Facebook that I was attacking the president for highlighting that his foreign policy is bad and it's making us all pay a lot more money. But you know what? That's a risk I'm willing to take. So if Kash Patel comes knocking at my door for highlighting the gas prices are bad, I'm just hoping that the price of gas per gallon doesn't get up to $86.47 per gallon, because then I'd be incredibly nervous. You know what I mean? That would be a very difficult thing to handle. I think MAGA has found my TikTok page because someone's telling me it's temporary. Oh, you mean like when Joe Biden was telling us that inflation was transitory, right? I remember those comments from back in the day. Waka waka, MAGA. I remember when those were supposed to be that was supposed to be liberal talking points. So it turns out that these higher gas prices are just transitory. Drill, baby, drill, as someone says sarcastically in my YouTube chat here. Herb says, about time to do some yearly refinery maintenance. And Clean and Sober Nation saying driving less when I'm able due to crazy high gas prices. Plus last month I was billed 44 to 45 cents per kilowatt hour. Holy crap. Holy crap. When I was selling energy suppliers, I was selling 6.8 cents per kilowatt hour, and that was in 2012. Holy crap, guys. That number kind of blew my mind. I'm going to look into that more. I was selling 6.8 cents. You're telling me you're at 44. I realize the difference between PA and California, but wow. Wow. Yeah, she went on to say it hurts. Yeah, no kidding. I have a More Perfect Union. If you guys don't follow them, you should. You do great. They do great reporting. They're in Indiana, which is the only state in the Midwest that has a higher electricity cost than Wisconsin does right now per kilowatt hour. And they're getting bills $600, $700, $800 at a town hall. I was watching a video, but I didn't particularly care for the way that they laid it out. Otherwise, I'd be playing it for you right now. But that was the basics. It's just unsustainable, and these groups are coming and asking us for more money and then blaming developments in solar panels that never even come to fruition. That's absolutely wild. Someone listening in Central PA says it's about 21 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's a little bit of frame of reference. I mean, in California, I'm sure has excess taxes on all of their energy because that's what they do. They tax the crap out of you there and then don't give you any of the benefits for all of the excess taxes. But that's absolutely wild to me. And here's the thing, and this is why I set it up this way. This is how the show was supposed to go. This is just the tip of the iceberg. As I kind of started to highlight at the end of the show yesterday, I believe a lot of the foreign policy decisions that we have been making over the course of the last decade and a half have been determined by which countries have access to the minerals necessary for the technological advancements that make our newfangled futuristic lifestyles possible. Lithium batteries for phones and electric cars, semiconductor chips for phones, and AI agents, and a number of other technological advancements that I'm not going to pretend to be able to understand. It gets very interesting when you realize how many of those minerals are located in the Donbass region of Ukraine that Russia and America have essentially been engaged in a proxy war stalemate over. Iran discovering 10% of the world's lithium supply in their territory 3 months before Donald Trump's initial bombing campaign in June of 2025, probably having something to do with our renewed interest in Iran. Well, what if I told you that we have now found a massive deposit in America, which is now going to bring about a conversation of, do we invest in the alleged, major fingers there, technologies of the future and ruin the environmental landscape even further than we already have? Or do we continue in this foreign policy war where we threaten to take other countries like Greenland, like Ukraine, like Iran's mineral supplies in order to save our luscious natural lands? It's a real conversation that's going to be had, economics versus environmental. And I think we have to have a real conversation about it. This is what politics is supposed to be about, when one side of the aisle is in a bunch of babies crying every time someone makes a joke about their president. Jerry says, your parking story reminds me of the Seinfeld episode, The Parking Spot. George, tell Mike Moffat that you're not allowed to park head first. Oh, no, people always, I don't do it that way normally, but it was because people told me I couldn't. And I was like, all right, well, watch this. And that's that's just me, but I feel you. I know the episode you're talking about there as well. DSL says the UAE leaving the OPEC cartel causes them to collapse. That'll be a very good thing for the future, but I live in the here and now and am not currently happy. Oh yeah, and I'm hearing rumblings, DSL, about a potential multi-billion-dollar bailout for the UAE in response to what's been going on in Iran for the last 2 months, and I promise you I will actually lose it. Meanwhile, and then there's going to be another one. I've seen speculation that in order to rebuild what America and Israel have done together to Gaza, it's going to cost $75 billion. And I don't believe the Trump administration will do it, but you're also not going to sit here and watch me say that I don't think that our hands are dirty in that matter. And that's going to be another close to 12-figure handout while we're sitting here trying to figure out how we're going to keep a social security solvent. Got David here out in Nina saying, Ben, watched your speech last night, and I want to say kudos for keeping your message consistent regardless of your audience. I appreciate that. You want to know what's funny is it was a Democratic event, and the president of the 7th district came up to me and said, I think you could have gone even harder against Democrats. And I was like, well, tune into my show. But yeah, I didn't pull my punches, and I appreciate that. Available youtube.com. Just search Ben Cominos. Anna says there cannot be an economy without a planet. What a wild debate. Oh, tell me about it. But see, here's the thing, Anna, and I think it's valid. I think this is a valid thing to be talking about, because I do believe that the technologies included in solar panels and electric cars and certain elements of AI are the way of the future. Not all of them, but certain elements are. And if we don't do it, it doesn't mean other countries also won't. And so then it becomes a matter of, do we get sent to the Stone Ages because we won't drill the lands and we won't do the wars, although it seems like do the wars is the obvious answer to a lot of our elected leaders right now. But the Democratic answer seems to be, okay, we can't get the hippies mad about drilling, so let's do this proxy war in Ukraine tell people that it's about democracy and Ukraine's sovereignty and all these things, when in reality, 70% of some massive deposits of nickel and cobalt and antimony and lithium are all available in the Donbass region. Notice Russia pushed through the Donbass region pretty easily, and now there's been a stalemate ever since. They haven't moved since they claimed the area that has 70% of the minerals necessary for the technology of the future. So if my options are wars for fake reasons that actually circulate around having access to these minerals, drilling ourselves, or a collective world pact that we got along without this technology before and we can get along without it again, I would pick the third option in a perfect world. But we're also not in a perfect world, and our competitors will build this technology. And I'm not talking about the AI technology that's going to take white-collar jobs and kind of put us out of work and all that kind of stuff, but to do the basics, to do the grunt work, to facilitate society a little bit. It would be like if the people of Appleton said, the paper industry means too much to us. I don't care how awesome you say the internet is. We are sticking to pen and paper and traditional snail mail, and we're going to do stuff the old-fashioned way because we're not putting our paper mills out of business. And the rest of the country adopted the internet. What would happen to Appleton if they continued to try to be the paper people in a time when paper was becoming less and less relevant with every passing year? And that's the part of the equation that needs to fit into this as well. And so to that effect, I'm going to go to break, and one of the most beautiful areas in this country is Appalachia. It takes a beating in the media, and there's a lot of jokes around the area, but take it from somebody who was born and raised in the Paris of Appalachia. There's a lot to be offered there. Wait until you hear the numbers about what was discovered there and the inevitable debate that's going to ensue, and we're going to have a real conversation about this. We'll be back in just a little bit. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY. You know what's better than Googling a plumber and hoping for the best? Checking the reviews and seeing your neighbors already trust and love them. Roush Plumbing has the Google reviews to back it up. Fox Valley homeowners are raving about the fast, friendly, and reliable service. And here's something you don't see every day. It's a free text line to a real plumber. You got a question before you schedule? Text it. Sometimes that's all you need. And with spring rains coming, don't wait to make sure that your sump pump is ready. Call or text Roush Plumbing, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. You can find that free text line and plenty of more info at timroushplumbing.com. Okay. Outside the box, Ben Cominos, WHBY. We're back. Possibly better than ever. No way to know for sure. I'm my only competition. I had a really good conversation with somebody off the air, and as the YouTube chat continues popping off here about Ukraine, as Larry says, Ukraine is part of the U.S. military-industrial complex with its drones. U.S. to buy $50 billion in drones. I don't know if you saw the story, just to pivot here really quickly. Russia stole bread from Ukraine and then turned around and sold it to Israel. And then Russia uses that money to sell some of their drones or buy some of their drones from Iran, thus enriching Iran's military, obviously facilitating food to Israel, who is allegedly one of our allies, and then making life more difficult for Ukraine as well, who we allege to be defending here. And it would stand to reason that if we're going to start an entire war in the Middle East in the name of helping out Israel, which essentially has been laid out in no uncertain terms in the most recent State Department report, you would hope that they might not go and fund our alleged adversaries in the Ukraine-Russia debate there, right? Like, what are we doing here? But that story's definitely an interesting one. But so we just wrapped up a conversation about the cost of gas, specifically in the Midwest, absolutely intending to shoot through the roof here. And talking about the foreign policy decisions that led to that rise in gas prices. We are now going to focus towards rare earth minerals and the access that we have to there. And I was talking with a new listener in the group chat on in TikTok, and they were saying, "Are you really endorsing the exploitation of the working class in the name of capitalism and the Epstein class?" And I was like, "No, but I live in reality." And the example I use to make it simple for people is I take it into the world I know well, video games. I want to live in a world where all video games come out on all platforms. Like, I want to be able to play the newest Super Mario Brothers game on a PlayStation 5. But I also understand that systems need content exclusive games to make you buy their system because they are competing with one another. Do I want to live in a world where art is just created for the sake of art and it's made available for as many people as possible? Absolutely. But that's not real life. And so I have to understand that while there's things that I want, and then there's the way that things work. And the best that you can do is try and improve the way that things work to best mirror what it is that you think the world should be. And so to that effect, as I was kind of highlighting in the lead up to this segment, a lot of the conflict started overseas is in the name of access to rare earth minerals. That was one of the first segments I did for you guys back in September and October of 2022, when we talked about the litany of different minerals that Ukraine had access to in the eastern part of the country that we wanted the access to. And I would tell you guys, much to this person's point, I'd say, this isn't even about keeping it cheap for us. It's about keeping the bottom line cheaper for Apple. You need lithium to make a lithium battery. Our smartphones, our iPhones, or fill in the blank, our Samsungs, our Google phones run on lithium batteries. This is not in the name of making the phones cheaper. Not to say that I would advocate for it if it did, but this is in the name of making the bottom line higher for the companies. That's why we're ultimately doing this kind of stuff. And we quasi reap the benefits. Yes, smartphones have made our lives easier, but also now they cost like infinity dollars. I remember the first one of these I got, you could get it for a $200. If you already had one, you traded that in, you got the next one for $200. Now they're like, yeah, we want $2,400, but we'll spread it over 2 years, so you're only paying $200 a month. So it's basically the same thing. Yeah, not really. And that is not something to fight a war for. And I would say the reason liberals are pushing for the war in Ukraine in the Biden administration is because they know if we didn't, then the conversation would have to turn to American soil, drilling on American soil, mining on American soil, much like what took place in my home state after the discovery of the Marcellus Shale. The Marcellus Shale helped make us energy independent. It was a massive energy resource right underneath our feet that no one knew existed until about 2009, 2010. I understand that there is a give and take here. When it comes to AI, when it comes to solar panels and electric cars and a lot of the technologies of the future, it's a constant balancing act between our one environment that we do not get a second shot at. As we continue taking it for advantage, that will always be there. As we continue taking that for advantage, we eventually will push it too far. So, why am I telling you guys all of this? Well, scientists quite literally just found a 2.3 million metric ton 2.3 million metric tons of lithium in Appalachia. And I misspoke when I was setting it up. I said it was the next 38 years, 38 years of our supply. I apologize. I misspoke. It's enough to replace 328 years of U.S. imports. That's a massive discovery. To put it in some context, 3 months before we started bombing Iran the first time, back in June of 25. In March of 25, Iran discovered a lithium deposit that accounted for 10% of the world's lithium deposit in their territory. And I was speculating. I said, it doesn't come as any coincidence to me that the bombing starts and we're having conversations about nukes and all these other dumb reasons for why we're supposedly bombing these people momentarily after they discovered a massive deposit of the metals necessary to build so much of the technology that we have deemed to be the technology of the future, or at least some of us have. What's going to be really funny to watch themselves twist themselves into knots is, as Republicans have blocked any type of movement on solar panels for the last quarter century, probably longer realistically, they're now going to be telling you about the importance of mining for these materials. And I'm here to tell you, that you could probably get me on board with some limited and conscientious efforts to do so. Because again, just like the video games analogy, unless we can enact a worldwide pact that we're all not going to do this, we inevitably will get left in the dust as Americans if we do not have access to these minerals. And I'm here to tell you right now, I don't want to start wars for them, and I don't want to slowly devolve into being a third world country because we don't have access to these minerals because we refuse to mine for them. But I also understand that we have been drilling and fracking and wrecking our environment for the better part of a century and a half, if not more, and there eventually is going to be a tipping point. This is what politics is supposed to be about, when half the realistically, most of the political aisle isn't a bunch of babies turning to social media every time their fifis get hurt to change the conversation to stuff that really doesn't matter or impact us in any kind of meaningful way. We're supposed to have adults in the room that have actually done the research, that are not bought and paid for by tech conglomerates, by oil executives, by environmental attitudes, whatever the situation is. They're supposed to be having real discourse about these real issues. How do we compete in a world economy that may be embracing this technology while also maintaining our environmental sanctity to the best of our ability, as we absolutely have half of our political aisle that seems like they actually just hate the environment? At least the elected officials do. I'd argue the people that vote for them, the people that hunt and fish and actively show more respect for the environment that I would argue most city slicker liberals do, I don't know how they reconcile those facts, but I do not believe it is any coincidence that a 328-year supply of lithium was discovered as we are watching the current administration roll back hundreds of millions of dollars. I mentioned it last week. $750 million. That's about 20 hours worth of the cost of the Iran war. $750 million taken away from national park reserves without really much any of an explanation at all. And as this becomes available, as Appalachia, who again, and I'm not being sarcastic, it's a very beautiful area. Movies like Deliverance and realistically the media in general paint it in a light that in some locations closer to accurate than you'd realize, but by and large is a much more diverse location than anyone who hasn't lived there would realize. Again, from the Paris of Appalachia, aka Pittsburgh, I'm telling you right now that's the case. This is a real conversation to be had, and something tells me we're not going to have it in any kind of actual way. And with that, we're going to tie a couple of stories together for the final segment here, but I do want to give you guys some reporting about manufacturing jobs in our state as well, and the way that that's being reported relative to why we're actually losing jobs. And we're going to tie that in with a couple of other stories as well before we wrap up a show. So everybody stick around, short break here, and we'll be back very quickly. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY. Shout out to everybody who made it through this show with me today. I appreciate all the support. DSL hit me up in the text line and said, "Why do I have to pay to recycle my TV when someone should be paying me because they want the precious metals and components in it? We're always getting scammed." I'm right there with you, man. You're exactly right. They make you jump through hoops to do this a certain way. It's all in the name of getting those materials because, again, there's a finite amount of them, and then they turn around and make a profit on it again after you already paid to do it. And they tell you it's for environmentally conscious ways. That's the part of the Democratic Party that I oftentimes highlight for you guys that kind of leaves us in a lurch. The excess regulations that impact the regular person, but somehow the major corporations are able to circumvent it. Tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a segment about housing costs. In Denver, they voted to change some regulations that prevented people from building smaller homes that would therefore be more affordable. And you see a bunch of Republicans saying, "Oh, so Democrats are Republicans now and against these regulations." And it's like, well, common sense people have always been against the stupid regulations. And the fact that like what DSL is talking about and what's going on in Denver, I think we're kind of starting to see a changing of the guard there to a certain extent, but I'd like to see this happen a lot faster. If only it could happen at the speed of a ballroom, I think that would probably be a lot more beneficial for all of us here. Really quickly, before we wrap up the program today, the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel is reporting that Wisconsin lost 8,600 manufacturing jobs from the state over the course of the last 18 months. Excuse me. And those jobs are not coming back, seems to be the general consensus surrounding the loss of those jobs. Or excuse me, I said 18 months. It was during 2025. It doesn't count these last 4 months, though. So from January 1 to December 31st of 2025, losing 8,600 manufacturing jobs in just 2025. This story goes viral to a certain extent, and you see people saying that the reason these jobs are going away is because of Governor Evers, because they have to drill down smaller and smaller, right? Like in the state of Wisconsin, conservatives have controlled the legislature for 16 years, and they've been governor for 8 years. In 2025, they controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and the Supreme Court. So pretty bold Republican control everywhere. So where's the one place that we can find a Democrat? Governor, bang. That's the reason why the jobs are disappearing, is that one liberal. If only we didn't have that one liberal and the rest of us be conservative, I'm sure we'd be in a good place right now. Here's the issue. Here's the issue with all of that, though. The reason 8,600 manufacturing jobs were lost were not because of tariffs, not because of any Trump policy, not because of foreign policy, not because of Joe Biden, not because of COVID, not even because of corporate greed. The manufacturing industry has a ton of boomers in it, and all these boomers are retiring. Now, whether or not these jobs are going to be replaced or not is another conversation entirely. And as we see the numbers kind of shake out from 2026, we'll be able to paint a more full picture as the trajectory we're on. Whether tariffs, AI, or some miscellaneous problem is the reason behind this decrease in numbers. But the reason the story's going viral is because, of course, to put a bow and tie this entire show together, a certain brigade of snowflakes identifying with a certain political party obsessed with the idea that America is no longer great, but it was once great, and it could be great again. I don't know how to simplify that sentence. Decided to run this story up the flagpole and blame liberal policies for the departure of manufacturing jobs, despite the fact that they have a pretty tall order ahead of them as the policies enacted by this administration resulting in farm bankruptcies, even more so than the Biden administration, and resulting in inflated costs and a more difficult life for companies across the nation. You're going to have an uphill battle convincing people that's the case. And that's all I have to say about that. More on the housing conversation tomorrow. You guys should be pretty interested to hear that there are some efforts nationwide going into this. Shout out to Anthony telling me to hang in there. We'll get there. I have to call it a show, of course. If you haven't already, please consider downloading the WHBY app. All you have to do is search WHBY in Google Play or in the App Store. It's free, easy to use, and you help out a local radio station. I upload my audio there shortly after it wraps up. On the personal level, I have a Ben Comino's YouTube page. I gave a speech to the 7th Congressional Dems that I get a ton of positive feedback about that I think a lot of you would get a kick out of. It's available on that page, as is every episode of Outside the Box. We also stream live on Facebook and TikTok every single day. Plenty of ways to take part in the show. I do my best to keep it all balanced. We've got Haley coming up on the other side of the break. And of course, I'll be back tomorrow. See ya, everybody, across all platforms. Take it easy. Outside the Box, WHBY.